Okay, now we're going to look at animation in Photoshop. And you can animate even 3D objects in Photoshop. So what I have here is I have a layered file. That's a product advertisement. So in this top layer, I'm going to turn that off so you can see the ad behind it. What I'm going to use this top layer for is I'm going to use this to be the product. I'm just going to name this soda can, and that's what I'm going to use in the 3D menu. I'm going to use a mesh of a soda can. So I'm going to go to 3D, down to new mesh from layer, mesh preset, and soda. And that will turn this into a can. And it takes the color from the layer, and that's not really that important right now because we're going to put a label on it. But you can see that this looks like a good 3D model. All we have to do is scale this a bit. So I'm going to go to the 3D panel. I'm going to select the soda can itself. And then using the widget here, I'm looking for this Y-shaped icon, which will allow me to scale this down. So I'm scaling this down by dragging. And I want this to be a little bit smaller. And then using the Y-axis, I want to grab the arrow and pull that down. The other thing I'm going to remove here is this cast shadow. So in the properties panel, you can see the cast shadows are right here. I'm going to just click the checkbox to remove the cast shadows for that. Now, to put the label on the can, I need to go back to the layers panel. So I'm going back to the layers panel. And this model clearly marks out what the label is. It's label material. So I'm going to go ahead and double click on that. And that'll open up this PSB file. And then I already have a label that I created earlier. So I'm going to embed that or place that onto the PSB file. And these sections up here, this is the top of the can. This dark section here is the bottom of the can. So this represents the majority, the visible portion of the can. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to scale this up. And the way that I've prepared the label is that all the pertinent information is in the center. So that's what we should see. When I double click on this and I give this a save, you should see the label on the can itself. So I'm going to go ahead and close the PSB file now. And now we're going to take a look at animation. So in Photoshop, we have a panel that's dedicated to animation. You can use this for animated GIFs or rendering QuickTime movies. You can even open up movies inside of Photoshop to make some small edits to them. So to find the timeline panel, I'm going to go to the window menu, down to timeline, and here's the timeline. Right now it's empty, there's nothing inside of it. So except for this button that says create video timeline, which I'm going to go ahead and click now. It's going to analyze the layers and it's going to give me all the different layers. And so first thing I want to do is animate the can. So I'm going to twirl open this layer and you can see I can animate position, opacity, style, and 3D camera position. So that's what I want to do now. I'm going to animate the 3D camera position. So these little icons are stopwatches, very much like what After Effects uses. So I'm going to put a stopwatch on the 3D camera position. Then I'm going to use my widget over here on the left, and I'm going to change the pan on the cam. So I'm going to click this and drag this out over on the left so that it starts off the screen. And then I move it forward to 20 frames. And again, using the widget, I'm going to drag to the right and center the can on the screen. And then you can see the two keyframes that appear here. And if I were to scrub through the timeline, you can see the actual animation happening. Okay, so that's that 3D can layer. And then I want to animate some of the other layers, so I'm going to go down in the timeline panel, down to the fizzy layer. You can see with other layers that are not 3D, we can animate transform, opacity, style, and text wrap. So transform, think of transform as kind of like position and scale and other things like that. So I'm going back to the beginning of the timeline, and I want to animate both properties. So I'm going to put a keyframe on transform and opacity. What I want to do is I want to move the text off of the screen, and I want to set its opacity to 0%. And then I'm going to move to 20 frames. And I'm going to increase the opacity to 100%. And then I'm going to move the text back onto the screen to where it was before. And then finally, the last thing I want to do here is I want to animate the text just below that, and I want to have it fade in when everything comes in. So this sparkling water text, I want to animate just the opacity. So starting on frame 20, I'm going to click the opacity stopwatch, and I'm going to set that to 0%. And then moving forward another 20 frames, I'm going to make the opacity 100%. So now if I pull this playback head all the way back and I play through the animation, you can see that we get an animated ad. Now, what can we do with this? Well, we can export this as a GIF file. We can export this as a QuickTime movie. So up here in the corner in this menu on the timeline panel, I can choose Render Video. And that will give me some options for the formats, QuickTime, H.264, DPX, or all these presets for the different resolutions. And I'm not going to do it now, but I could render this out as a video. So those are some of the animation options that you have in Photoshop.